growing up as a kid, yeah. All a nigga wanna have was a Burberry scarf and $3 in my pocket. Instead I got beat with a switch, but I don't give a fuck, but it's on my body. Scars all up on me, but I run around from.
The NFC North division is the division I don't think is all that great, but it's really interesting to watch. You got the Green Bay Packers who won the division, 13-3 record. They got destroyed by the 49ers in the NFC Conference Championship game. Then you got the Minnesota Vikings, who lost to the 49ers in the divisional round. They lost a lot. A lot. They probably lost more than any other team in the NFL this offseason. You got the Chicago Bears who went 8-8. Basically, their big pickup is probably picking up Nick Foles in a trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars to give Mitch Trubisky some competition at quarterback. Then you got the Detroit Lions who went 3-12-1, who, to be fair, they were pretty good when they had Matthew Stafford. If Matthew Stafford would have stayed healthy, he would have been an MVP candidate, and it really would have been interesting to see what Detroit's record would have been if he never would have got injured. So let's start with the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Green Bay Packers, I don't really think they lost all that much. I think that they lost Brian Bulaga and they lost Blake Martinez. Now, Brian Bulaga was good, but he was really inconsistent, in my opinion, for the Green Bay Packers last year. Then you lose Blake Martinez, but you replace him with Christian Kirksey, which I believe is an upgrade. Christian Kirksey, I think, is a really solid linebacker. I think he's an upgrade from Blake Martinez because Blake Martinez is a okay linebacker. Now, if he was playing back in the 90s or the early 2000s, he would be one of the best linebackers in the NFL. But Blake Martinez is only an average linebacker because he's not great in pass coverage. He's great against the run. He's a great tackler and everything, but against pass coverage, he's one of the worst pass coverage middle linebackers, so pass coverage linebackers in the NFL, and I felt like the New York Giants overpaid for him. So you replace him with Christian Kirksey, who if Christian Kirksey is able to stay healthy, I think he'll be a really good addition because he's really good in coverage. He's also a very solid tackler. I think he's a Pro Bowl caliber player if he's able to stay fully healthy. Now, the biggest knock on the Green Bay Packers this season has been they don't have all that great of a wide receiving core, and that's why they're not going to be great. And I think that's a little bit ridiculous to say that because you don't have to have a star-studded group of wide receivers to make it to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl. Look at the San Francisco 49ers, for example. Their best receiver was probably Emmanuel Sanders. And they also had George Kittle. But if you want to go further than that, go back and look at the Carolina Panthers from 2015. Their best receiver was who? Ted Ginn Jr. and Greg Olsen. That's pretty much it. So the narrative that people have to have a great wide receiver to win the Super Bowl isn't really all that big of a difference. You don't have to have a great group of wide receivers to win the Super Bowl. Does it help? Yes. But you don't have to have a star-studded group. The Green Bay Packers have enough weapons at the wide receiver position for Aaron Rodgers to still be successful. You got Devontae Adams, who a lot of Green Bay Packers never talk about for some reason. They say we got no receivers, but you got Devontae Adams, who is a top 3 wide receiver, top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Then you got some young wide receivers. You got Adam Lazard. You got Scantling there. You got Equanimeous St. Brown. So, I mean, they have some young guys at the wide receiver position that I think should be able to step up and become that number 2 option behind Devontae Adams. Now, the tight end position, you got Jay Sternberger, who is the guy who should look to step up. So, I mean, the offensive line is a little bit in question. But overall, I think the Green Bay Packers have a really solid team. Now you look at the Minnesota Vikings. Boy, they lost a lot. Everson Griffin, a free agent. Got rid of Trey Waynes. Got rid of Xavier Rose. Dalvin Cook may sit out to start the season. Traded Stephon Diggs to the Buffalo Bills. Now you bring in Jeff Gladney. You bring in Justin Jefferson, but those guys are rookies. We don't really know how good those guys are going to be yet because we haven't seen them play an NFL game yet. Now, the Minnesota Vikings still have a pretty solid roster, but I think it's a little bit crazy to say that the Minnesota Vikings did not lose a lot of talent because they lost a lot of key places last year in the offseason. Now, you got the Chicago Bears. Now, a lot of Bears fans were upset with me because I still feel like the Bears aren't really that much of a playoff team because their offensive line is a question mark. I know their defense is going to be great. And you got Nick Foles at quarterback, but I don't think he's going to start right away for the Chicago Bears. I still think that with the ongoing coronavirus and the pandemic that's going on, the Chicago Bears are still going to start Mitch Trubisky week 1. And even if Nick Foles is the better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky like we all think, I don't think the Chicago Bears are going to be quick to move on from Mitch Trubisky just because they picked up Nick Foles. You guys got to think, the Chicago Bears spent a first-round pick on Mitch Trubisky. They traded up to get this guy over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. So if you think that they're easily just going to ride off Mitch Trubisky and they're just going to go ahead and bench him and start Nick Foles without giving him a chance to start a few games at the start of the regular season, I think you got to go back and rethink that. Because, think about it. If you are the general manager for the Chicago Bears, and you know that you made a mistake in drafting Mitch Trubisky, and you still want to see if Mitch Trubisky has what it takes to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, are you just going to say, you know what? We're not even going to give you a chance. We've seen enough out of you the last couple of seasons. We're going to start Nick Foles. Or are you going to try to see if you got your first round picks worth and give Mitch Trubisky one more shot to prove that he has what it takes to be the franchise quarterback for the Chicago Bears moving forward? Now, the Chicago Bears wide receiving core is pretty solid, is all right. It's not great, but it's not terrible. But you can also make the excuse that Mr. Trubisky held back a lot of wide receivers. Now, the last team is the Detroit Lions. Now, the Detroit Lions, I already made a video about this, are the biggest boom or bust team in the NFL going into this upcoming season. And the reason why they're boom bust is because they remind me a lot of the Cleveland Browns from last year. The Cleveland Browns had a lot of talent, but they had a couple of positions that had some question marks around them. And the biggest question mark was their head coach, which was Freddie Kitchens. And what did happen with the Cleveland Browns last year? They busted. They didn't even make it to the playoffs, and they didn't even have a winning record. Now, when you look at the Detroit Lions, they have a really great offense with Darrell Bevell as their offensive coordinator, who, when Matthew Stafford was healthy, this was a top 10 offense. This was a top 10 attack. Now, the offensive line's a little bit of a question mark. Matthew Stafford is going to be coming back from his injury. How good is he going to be? And is he going to be able to live up to that same level of play that he was able to play to last year when he was playing like an MVP? You got one of the better wide receiving cores in the NFL with Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay. You also got TJ Hawkinson back at tight end. Then you pick up DeAndre Swift and this past year's NFL draft, and you pair him up with Kerryon Johnson. So now you got a really good 1-2 punch there at the halfback position. Now the defense is going to determine how good the Detroit Lions are actually going to be. Because when you look at this Detroit Lions defense on paper, this is a New England Patriots caliber defense. From the defensive line being big and having a lot of elite run stoppers, having cornerbacks like Desmond Trufant, who played for the Falcons. You pick up Jeff Okudah, who a lot of people compare to Patrick Peterson. I think he's a little bit more Stephon Gilmore-like. But overall, the defense is going to determine the success of the Detroit Lions this season. So the team that I'm going with to win the NFC North is going to be the Green Bay Packers. And I think the Green Bay Packers is a safe bet because they didn't lose that much. They basically had the same team from last year. They upgraded from Blake Martinez. Still got a great defense. You still got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. You're going to be able to run the football effectively. I think the dark horse is going to be the Detroit Lions, who should come in second place. Then you got Minnesota and Chicago, who I think ends up finishing behind the Packers and the Lions. So, like I said, the NFC North, I think, is probably only going to get one team in the playoffs. I don't think this division is all that great. I think a lot of teams have a fair good amount of questions going in. But overall, I just think the Packers should be able to win that because they do have the better quarterback. They have the best quarterback in the division, actually. And you got the best coach in the division. So when you look at that, I think Green Bay should be able to win the NFC North this year.